Okay, great. I think it's time to get started. It's 5:01. Looks like our number of participants is slowing down as people are dialing in this evening. Good evening. My name is Susie Chase. I am the Vice President of Advancement and Alumni Affairs for Washington College. I'm also a 1990 graduate of the college, and I am the parent of a current student, a senior at Washington College. So this is an interesting topic to me as well. I'm joined tonight by several of my colleagues. Thrilled to be joined by our brand new president, Dr. Wayne Powell. We're joined also by our new provost, Dr. Michael Harvey, Dr. Sarah Fireherm, who is our vice president of student affairs. We're joined also by our director of athletics, Thad Moore, and Lisa Marks, our fabulous director of health services. We have added a few more folks to the panel tonight. We wanted to make sure that we are providing all of our parents with as much current information about the spring semester to all of you who have dialed in. We certainly appreciate how much you care about your student, your child. We care about those students equally. We know this is a difficult time for many of you, for all of us, and we appreciate your patience and certainly helping us to get through these new strange times. A couple of notes as we get started tonight. Based on the questions that you've pre-submitted to us, tonight's agenda will be primarily centered around the spring semester. To eliminate any background noises, except for the panelists, and sometimes you might hear a barking dog amongst the panelists or something going on. We do have all of our participants muted except for the panelists. We've received some great questions from you all, and we thank you so much for that. We're going to do our best to get through all of them, but we are going to stick to 60 minutes. So should we run out of time, please know that if your questions don't get answered here tonight, we will get back to you. We will have your email address because you've registered here, you've sent us questions, and we will make sure that your questions get answered directly by a member of our staff or one of the participants here this evening. If you have a question that you don't feel has been covered tonight, we encourage you to use the question and answer feature on the Zoom link. The chat box has actually been turned off to keep us from getting distracted from that. So we'd like to just focus on questions and answers. And if you would just use that Q&A function for questions, we may answer your question on the chat function, or we may actually answer your question. We may direct your question to one of the panelists this evening. We are recording this webinar, and we will be providing the link to this, posting the link to this webinar to our website, also to our Facebook page, and we'll make sure that we email that link out as well. Please know how critical you and your family are to our plans going forward, and we are so grateful for all that you do to be part of this community. We appreciate your efforts to be informed on our decisions and for partnering with the college as we navigate these uncharted waters. But right now, I'm delighted to introduce you to our new president, my new wonderful friend, Dr. Wayne Powell. He is a native of Gainesville, Florida, and he is the president emeritus of Lenoir-Rhyne University in North Carolina, where he did fabulous things down there. I hope you'll take a moment to learn about it. I'm not going to read you his entire CV because it would take the full 60 minutes, but I will give him a chance to introduce himself to you all this evening.
Well, thank you, Susie. It's really a pleasure to be here. You know, one of the many great constituencies we have at Washington College that we get to see the least often are the parents, and you folks are especially important to us because you have shared your children with us for 4 years, and hopefully when they leave here, you'll be calling them your adults. So that's part of the experience they have at Washington College. These are unusual times for all of us. I know in my family, especially when you're thinking about Thanksgiving coming up, we usually have a lot of people getting together for a big dinner and enjoyable time. And we've all decided that we're going to do that by Zoom this year. So we'll be having a turkey dinner by Zoom. And that means that we'll probably have a lot of leftovers. So I know that just kind of indicative of how uncertain and different these times are. One of the things we want to share with you tonight is about the details of how we're trying to address the issues that we're all facing in the context of, first of all, making sure we ensure the safety of our students, faculty, and staff. And then secondly, that we provide everybody with a Washington College quality of education, because we think that's very special. And we want to make sure that your students, our students, are the beneficiaries of that. You know, I've only been here now for, I think it's 2.5 months. It's adding up quickly. I've been impressed with a lot of things, our great academic traditions, our commitment to excellence in everything we do. But one of the things that's been most impressive that you don't know about till you get here is the really detailed attention to planning and thinking through all the possibilities that that people here do, the administration, the faculty and staff, and how well they work together to come up with solutions to problems. So that's what we're talking to you about today. We've created a plan for the spring that we think is optimal, and that it protects safety, but also provides the Washington College style of education. Now, there's a lot of stuff now, you watch the news, you know that the virus isn't getting any better. COVID's growing. In fact, the most recent reports show that it hasn't even begun to slow its rate of growth, and that's very concerning. I want to assure you that we plan to continue as we've announced. We think that the plans we have for the spring semester were carefully thought out enough so that we're not too concerned about the additional issues that are rising nationally. Just tell you a few of the strengths about these, and then you'll get to ask some questions, and we have some answers already prepared for you from some of our college leaders. One of the things that we have that really makes our program, I think, safest is we have this de-densified housing model. So that means just one student per room. So people won't be sleeping in the same rooms with others where you'll be breathing the same air. There's all a natural isolation process there. And then we're going to be doing regular testing of all of our students, about 50% of them every week, so that we can identify any cases that might show up, and then we can quickly act on those. And if we do get a positive case, which we're certain we will, we'll begin immediate contact tracing, and we have quarantine and isolation spaces and residence halls that we can use. So we think we're prepared to handle it in the best way possible. Because we have the online model built into every course in advance, we're pretty confident that no matter how things develop with the COVID virus, that we can continue all of our course offerings, and that's really important. And then, of course, with a lot of students back on campus, we're worried. A lot of people are asking questions about the various services, and we think we have dining services and food delivery options already planned out, so that depending on what the alert levels are, we can be responsive to just about any situation. So we will be continuing to monitor on a daily basis the situation on campus with everybody back, and we use data to analyze and see where we are and check our percentage rates of positive cases and make our decisions based on that. But again, as I'd said before, we think we're in good shape, that we can keep things going. We do have something we want to ask of you, because much of the success of our spring semester is going to be dependent on how our students choose to follow the guidelines and the standards that are set, with social distancing and wearing masks and making sure to hand sanitize and all these things that we have learned how to do in this new world. And we know that our students depend on you for advice all the time. Having raised 3 children, I know that there's nothing they like more than to hear the advice of their parents. So please, in good spirits, remind them that the success of this semester will be dependent on how well they stick with all the rules and regulations. And so it's really on their shoulders, and hopefully you can help us in that process. So with all that said, we've got a lot of things that we want to share with you tonight. So I think we should turn it back. I'll turn it back to Susie and just say again, thank you for joining and paying attention, listening to us tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Powell. Again, before we get started with we're going to go first to your pre-submitted questions. But before we do that, we've got a few important updates that we'd like to offer you. And I'd like to start with our first update coming from Lisa Marks. Again, Lisa is the college's Director of Health Services. And I'd like to ask Lisa to give our parents tonight an overview of the COVID testing plan for the spring. If you would do that, Lisa, that would be great.
Sure, Susie, thanks. We're planning to conduct our gateway testing, which is going to be a PCR anterior nasal swab. I call it the kindler, gentler swab. It's not the one people really hate. We're going to do that on arrival for all of our students back on campus. Both are on the students living on campus and the ones living in the Chestertown vicinity. We're going to do a follow-up round of testing about 12 days later, and then we're going to roll everyone into our surveillance testing program that Dr. Powell mentioned, which is 50% of our students on a weekly basis. We had hoped to be able to use the free testing that was available through a partnership with the Kent County Public Health Department, but that testing source may be cut if the CARES Act funding is not re-signed by the end of December. So we're still in negotiations with the Maryland Department of Health if that funding source is still available for spring, but we've always got to have a plan B, and we certainly have learned that as small liberal arts colleges, and a C and a D and so on. So our plan B basically is we've entered into an agreement with the University of Maryland's pathology lab in Baltimore. They use a CDC PCR testing machine. We'll be standing up a permanent on-campus testing site at Kirby Stadium for spring. And we expect the turnaround time for those tests from Baltimore to be about 48 hours, which is fantastic for us. We will be able to do symptomatic testing through LabCorp, which is a local lab site in town. We'll be using the students' private health insurance to do that. And the turnaround time right now varies from about 48 to 72 hours. We have ordered an Abbott ID Now molecular COVID testing machine. It's for use on campus, but we're waiting for the actual manufacturer delivery of the testing supplies. We don't have those in hand yet. We've had a few parent suggestions, Susie, and some questions around the use of those antigen tests that everybody hears about, the cheap $5 to $10 tests, which are fantastic. So antigen testing tells us if the student's been exposed to a virus, but it's not specific to COVID. It could be positive if the student has something like the flu or some other respiratory virus. We've reached out to our medical suppliers to investigate those antigen tests, which are less expensive, but the pipeline to order and receive those products is very unstable right now. They're not guaranteed. So that test is different from blood antibody testing, which we get some parent questions about. We can order blood antibody testing as needed. That's on a case-by-case basis through LabCorp, depending on the clinical circumstances of the student's need. That antibody testing will tell us whether the student has any immune response or any protection against coronavirus. We've had a few questions about the ability to test on weekends if the student becomes ill. And what our plan is right now, we have quarantine and isolation coordinators on duty 24/7. They're going to be trained to respond to calls from any sick students. And under protocols, those Q&I coordinators will have medical consultation available to them. And that'll help determine whether or not the student needs to be placed in isolation at that moment, which will be in our Corsica dorm, or if the student's condition worsens, then they would be taken to the ER right next door. We'll treat all of our sick students as a person under investigation until COVID is ruled out. So we consider them a suspect case. And we'll do that until testing can be obtained, since LabCorp is only open Mondays through Fridays. So that's a quick rundown of the testing.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. And I know we'll get into some more details should parents have any further questions about our testing policy and plan. I'm going to ask for one more update before, again, we get started with your pre-submitted questions. And I'd love for our Director of Athletics, Thad Moore, to give our parents a little bit of an update on the plan for spring athletics.
Thank you, Susie. Good evening, everybody. I just want to start off first to kind of give you a couple updates from the NCAA. In case you were wondering, I know some parents are asking some questions about what's the NCAA doing. The NCAA has authorized blanket waivers for all of our student athletes this year, meaning that no one is going to use a year of eligibility if they participate in athletic competition for this school year. And if there's any questions with that, or if they have any questions, obviously they can certainly contact me or Coach Corey Beddick, who's our baseball coach, but he also serves as our compliance director. Plans for the spring. We're currently awaiting a decision from our conference presidents, obviously not our president, the other 10 presidents in the conference, regarding the status of the winter and spring sports. That said, we're planning a very robust practice schedule for all 18 of our varsity sports in the spring, but we're also in the stages of planning stages of what a competitive spring season would look like for our spring sports if we're permitted to do so. I know some of our athletes have asked, do they need to return earlier than what we're allowing to be able to participate in sports? The answer is no, they don't this year. Typically, our spring sports start on February 1st anyway. And a lot of these athletes, they're going to come in, they're going to have the self-quarantine for 14 days. And as soon as they roll off that self-quarantine, we'll start practicing. So I don't think there's going to be many days. You're looking at probably 3 or 4 days out of the normal, what a normal spring would look like for our student athletes. So I think we're ready to go. As soon as they become eligible off the self-quarantine, we'll integrate them into our practices and we'll move forward and have a wonderful spring semester with them.
Great. Thank you so much, Thad. We really appreciate that. Again, for anybody who has just dialed in here, I just want to remind people to please use the Q&A function. Should you have any questions for us tonight that you don't feel have been answered or covered by our panelists. And again, the chat function has been turned off and we are recording this, and we will be circulating that out through email. We'll post it on Facebook, and we will have that on our website. So now it's time for our pre-submitted questions. Let's start with a question for Dr. Fireherm and Thad. This one will be for the two of you. In order to encourage students to come back to campus, what extracurricular activities do you have planned, especially for freshmen?
Thanks, Susie. Good question. We talked about this at the last forum, but we've some more details are sort of coming into focus. We've got a group that is working very hard. It's a collaborative group that's working on developing a slate of activities for the spring. So that includes our student government, our student events board, our director of intercultural affairs is part of this conversation. Athletics is part of the conversation as well. And what we're looking to is a variety of both virtual and in-person, when possible, activities. Certainly the concerns for first-year students, because the first-year students are actually going to make up a big portion of our on-campus population. And the first-year students are going to be generally living together. And that will certainly enhance things. So as students get through the quarantine period and we then allow students to start to do things outside of their residence halls, they'll also be able to start to meet and interact with those students, those other first-year students who are on their hall, and be able to do that indoors. In addition to that, our peer mentors and our RAs are starting to develop some ideas about things that they would like to do with their first-year students, and certainly upper-class students can do these things as well. And those will include activities like a few of them walking down to the farmer's market on a Saturday morning. We have a fire pit that is that students use often in the past for making s'mores. Again, reduced occupancy, everybody masked, but those are some things that we can do outside. A lot of the stores, coffee shops in Chestertown still welcoming people back. They have their own, the masking policies, but our students, once we get out of quarantine, will be able to start to do those things either by themselves or with small groups of people. In addition, a lot of the online activities are starting to take shape about which things students are more interested in if they don't have total Zoom fatigue. Things like virtual trivia contests, karaoke, a number of things have seemed to be a little bit more popular. So certainly a focus on our first-year students and helping them get to know each other. That will be more challenging this year, but that has always been one of our highest priorities for first-year students, is to get to know each other, connect them with the upper class students who can then guide them through their experience as they move on. I mentioned that athletics is part of this collaborative group that's working up some activities, and certainly working out or other activities are really important to many students. So I'll punt it over to Thad to talk a little bit about those.
Sure, thanks, Sarah. I think obviously club and intramural sports is one of the opportunities that we have for student engagement. We're still working on what that potentially would look like for the spring semester. Obviously, with the confines of the colder weather to start the semester, it adds an additional element to those decisions of what we feel safe and what we don't feel safe. So we're still working through that process. I think after the quarantine period is over, our facilities will be opened up to all students and this entire student body. And what we have right now, we're hopeful that this system will work. It's been working so far. Is there's a Google Doc sign up sheet where we can have the student goes in and logs in and requests the time to sign up and access our facilities. And I think we do that for a couple of reasons. One, to make sure that we're accommodating everyone that wants to accommodate, but it also allows us the ability to contact trace if there's a certain point in time where we can identify it. So it speaks to some of the things that everyone else is saying this evening, that we're trying to do everything we can to ensure the safe return of our students. At the same time, balancing it with making sure that we're addressing the needs and engaging them in the appropriate ways.
Great, thank you so much. Sarah, back to you. What are the expectations around travel for Thanksgiving break?
Great. So we do have, as you all know, we've got some students living in Chestertown. We've got a few students living on campus as well. And a lot of our communication has been very much focused on them. And I will tell you, and certainly you're aware of, again, what's happening nationally and even in Maryland, there is a new travel advisory. And essentially what we are telling our students is that we do not advise that if they are here and they want to come back before the semester is over, before the end of the year, we're advising them not to go home for Thanksgiving. There's a lot of risk involved in that, and we're hoping that they'll make good decisions about that. That said, a lot of our students who are here may be choosing to go back home or go somewhere else for the remainder of the semester and won't be returning until next semester. And of course, that is fine. But we just are reminding people that there are a slew of travel advisories and restrictions that are in place right now. If we do have students who choose to go somewhere else for Thanksgiving and then want to return here and access our facilities before the rest of this semester is over, Health Services is going to offer the ability for them to test. And I believe on November 30th, but we are certainly, they can get a test at home before they return. And that is another way they could come back and continue to access the facilities right now. Again, we're really concerned about travel at this point. There's a lot of data and a lot of information that indicates a lot of these small gatherings are the source of a lot of additional infections. And we just really want to make sure that people are making good decisions around that.
Great, thank you so much. All right, Lisa, your turn. Lisa, can you please talk about what support will be in place for students who have COVID-related needs on nights or weekends? For example, what happens if a student spikes a fever at 6 p.m. on a Friday?
That's a great question. We've sort of faced that this semester with our few students that lived in town or were living on campus, where we had to address that. Again, we are in the process of hiring some additional support staff to address the COVID-related issues. Our quarantine and isolation coordinators will be on duty 24/7. They will have access to medical direction from my team here to be able to call if there's a student who's ill and needs some medical guidance. So, they won't be left alone in the dorms. We're expecting our Q&I coordinators in conjunction with our Res Life staff, our RA staff, anybody that's interacting with the student to be able to help that student reach out if they need additional services. So, after hours, if a student's ill, they will call a centralized number, which we'll publish when we get closer to the semester, that they can call 24/7 if there's a problem, and we can respond to that student individually.
Great, thank you so much. Moving on to Dr. Harvey. Michael, why did you set the target date for potential return to in-person classes in late March? Are you giving any consideration to starting earlier if possible?
The process of planning the spring semester has been complex. One of the themes of what we've done is listen to community members. So I would say it is certainly possible that if we hear from a lot of people that there's a strong rationale for, say, moving up a week or so, the return to in-person. And if that satisfies the people working on this, it's that safe. Wayne spoke in his remarks about all the people who have been part of this planning. I want to mention that students have also been involved in this planning, not just faculty and staff. Hold on just a second.
The challenges of being at home.
Yes, I had a nice background, but my shoulders kept disappearing in the background, so I decided to let you see where I actually do my work. COVID has changed so much about our work. If any parent or student wanted to come and visit in person, this is how you'd probably see me. That's how we spend our days, wearing the masks. So in terms of planning for the spring, we want to see how things go when students come back to campus. This is, I think what we're witnessing right now around the country is rising rates of infection, and it seems prudent. We think we can safely manage, and safety is our #1 concern. We think we can safely manage bringing students back to campus, but we don't know for sure how that's going to go. So it seems prudent in terms of planning the best teaching for students to start online and then to transition over. When exactly we make that transition point, it's going to be a complex transition. I'll remind you that even if every student who wants to come back comes back to campus, we're going to have hundreds of students participating remotely. And it is important in all of our planning not to lose sight of those students. Transitioning a class from online to in-person is complicated. Faculty are essentially going to be doubling their workload because we essentially know that in every class there will be some in-person students and some remote students. We have to successfully teach all of them, right? Every student is equally important. And it seems wise to calibrate the transition with a pause that is going to be made possible by our reduced spring break. That said, I'll return to the point at the beginning. I suppose that if we hear a lot of sentiment like this and we've made some other changes in our planning, we could certainly revisit it and at least look again at that decision on when exactly to transition. Along the way, we've tried to make the best decisions based on the best information. The principles are safety and the best possible teaching for all of our students wherever they are.
Thank you. Sarah, if a decision is made to cancel the spring sports season and classes remain online, will students be given the option to move back home and receive a prorated refund for housing?
So our policy around room and board refunds this semester is that if the college were to make a decision to send students home and to vacate, we would offer prorated refunds. We will not be doing the same if the student makes that decision on their own during this semester. I will say I know some people are still a little bit on the fence about whether they want to come to campus, and we did have an initial deadline to sign up for campus housing by the 11th, which was yesterday. We do still have some space on campus, so those who are still on the fence and not sure, you can certainly still make that decision and request to live on campus. I will say, as we start to get closer to December, that means a change in the billing, and it may take you a little longer to get your bill. But at this point, we do still have some space. So if you start to feel as if there's a comfort level and you would like to do that, we'll still be able to do that.
Thank you. Lisa, is having to work off campus an allowable exception to the rule that students should remain on campus for the duration of the semester?
Susie, we have a lot of students that need to work off campus. I don't want to stop anybody from working and being able to be financially stable. So, we're working on protocols around how students can best do that. At the least, we're going to require the use of like the daily EMOCA app, and they'll be rolled into our testing plan. And we're still working on protocols for students, much like we are with students doing other types of experiences.
And Susie, I would add too that we really encourage our students to pursue and look for on-campus jobs. We've got a director of student employment. We will have jobs available for students, and obviously that's the more we can stay within our campus pod, the better. So certainly we encourage them to look if they need to have a job to look on campus first.
Great, thank you. Lisa, let me come back to you for a minute here. If my student opts not to live on campus, but wants to come onto campus for classes to use a library or other resources, will they have to provide a negative COVID test prior to being granted access?
I'd say initially the answer is yes. And in addition to that, that student needs to be enrolled in that EMOCA app that we're using as our daily symptom attestation tracker. And they have to be using that app every day. We're requiring our students that are currently on requesting access to campus to have at least 3 days of green before they're allowed to access our fitness facilities, the dining hall, show up for sports practices. And so we would apply that globally to all of our students who wanted access to campus.
Great, thank you. Lisa, we're going to stay with you for a minute. Are there any plans for a mass vaccination clinic for Washington College students, faculty, and staff should a coronavirus vaccine become available?
Yes, we've been planning that for several months now in advance. We are an institutional member of the Healthcare Emergency Response Coalition for this county. We are such a small county. We really are very interdependent on all of our community partners for resources for pandemics and epidemics and disasters and tragedies. And so we've already been talking about this for several months now. We just had a call on Tuesday with our Kent County Health Department partners, and that was around vaccination planning. So as many of you have heard, the rollout for coronavirus vaccine will target our healthcare providers, frontline, workers, EMS, fire, police, and personnel first. Then our high-risk populations, which I'm assuming they're qualify as congregate settings, jails, detention centers, and our nursing homes, and then it'll be rolled out for everybody else. So they're giving us a timeline somewhere around the end of December, 1st of January to begin rolling that out. And we will have to partner with our community health department to be able to get enough vaccine shipped from the suppliers to this entire county to be able to vaccinate.
Great, thank you very much. Thad, I'm going to ask you to take your Director of Athletics hat off for 1 minute. And could you put your Buildings and Ground hat on for us, please? And we have a parent who's got some concerns. I have some concerns about the ventilation systems in the Washington College buildings. Can you speak to specifically what types of filters you're using and how often those filters are being replaced?
Sure. To get into specifics, it's very difficult because we have a lot of different types of air handling systems throughout the campus. What I can tell you is that all the systems have been checked, they've been serviced, the filters have been changed, and the plan right now is that all the filters will be changed again over spring break this upcoming semester.
Okay, thank you very much. You know what, Thad, since we're with you, we have an open question from our parents this evening. Can you just give us a little update on what's happening with club sports in the spring, such as girls volleyball?
Sure. I think club sports will be evaluated similarly to what our varsity sports will be evaluated as. Specifically club volleyball, if we're getting into specifics with that one, it's an indoor sport. Right now, indoor sports with volleyball and basketball, the NCAA has classified them as high risk. but there's certainly some capabilities that we can do it and do it safely. We just haven't made a decision about competition wise. We can certainly look at scheduling practice opportunities and set the bar for the expectations for what they need to do to be able to participate in that. And I think we're taking that as a case-by-case basis, sport-by-sport basis, when we make those decisions, whether low risk to high risk, we're making a decision individually, sport by sport.
Great, thank you very much. Dr. Harvey, what changes will we see to student programming, qualified faculty with PhDs, class sizes, the arts and student services due to the budget cuts?
So COVID has had a big impact on college finances, but Washington College has a pretty robust endowment, over $200 million. And I'm very pleased that our board and our senior leadership, first of all, we're tightening the belt in all sorts of ways. And I oversee the academic affairs budget. I'm bringing forward the smallest academic affairs budget in a long time during this COVID year. But teaching students is job number one at the college, and a rich student experience is job number one at the college. None of that is compromised by what we're doing this year. I think the board understands that a once in a generation pandemic requires once in a generation sort of board leadership on the fiscal side. There's an additional story that the college is navigating at the same time as COVID. It's a heck of a year, but we're in the same boat as a lot of liberal arts colleges. At the same time that the college is navigating the particular challenges of COVID, we are also engaged on rebalancing our budget to deal with a period of some decline in enrollment. I'm a faculty member. I love teaching. I love the kind of teaching we do here. And it's been my commitment through all of this that even as we face our fiscal realities and make responsible choices for the future, we're doing it every step of the way to protect the student experience and student learning. So our student to faculty ratio is going to stay great. Programs are going to remain strong. Student access to COVID permitting, and we have a complex dashboard and we're going to hope that the dashboard stays in the green a lot more than it stays in the yellow or the orange or the red. Student access to all the wealth of co-curricular and extracurricular learning opportunities is going to remain. We're looking at ways, once we're in person again, to bring students back to labs, and there's going to be no reduction in lab access because of budget cuts or because of dealing with COVID or anything else. I think my big challenge, our big challenge, is creating the richest possible learning environment, whatever COVID throws at us. And again, I'll repeat, for all of our students, you know, we're thinking a lot about a rich in-person experience, but we're thinking a lot also about all of those students who, because of personal reasons, family reasons, are going to participate remotely. We've been pretty darn good this fall at delivering rich learning. We're getting better at it. We'll keep doing that in the spring for those students.
Thank you so much. Dr. Fryerholm, a question for you. So much of the responsibility for success is driven by our students' choices. What strategies is Washington College planning to encourage this?
Sure. Yeah, student choices and behavior are really elemental to our success. So there's a few things that we're doing right now that I think are going to be really important in this effort. We've had a group that's developed two really important documents. One is our COVID conduct code. We thought that was very important, and we're going to be getting this out to students very quickly so they understand what the college response is and what the expectations are about their behavior and what would happen if they didn't follow those. And I think this document is going to be very helpful because it also builds into it an understanding that not every violation is the same. And that sometimes somebody makes a very minor mistake that could be corrected. And then sometimes someone may make a mistake that might be a little bit more intentional, a little bit more dangerous. So there is a range of those repercussions depending upon what happens. And so that is really important as we get that out to students. They get a chance to read it. We're going to encourage them to share that with you. So you might want to ask your student if maybe in a couple of weeks whether they've gotten that, and you can take a look at that as well and talk about their decisions that they're going to need to make. I think in addition to that, we have a health pledge, which again, we try and be as aspirational as possible, because we know and believe that every member of the community, including students, does ultimately want to do something that's best for the community. Do people make mistakes? Do people occasionally make poor decisions? Yeah, they do, but ultimately we're on the same page here. So the health pledge reminds students of all the things that they are going to be expected to do to maintain a healthy environment around campus. And that includes compliance with our testing protocol and using the AMOCA app, and using their mask correctly, and staying six feet apart, and doing all those things. So those two pieces are really important. We're also doing some work. We have a student campaign, Better Together, that our college relations and our student life staff are working together with our students, and we're having students submit. We're doing essentially a contest to submit short videos that we're going to be pushing out to students on how they can all make good decisions about certain activities. So we're really excited to see what the students come up with. I think those types of things are really critical to addressing what community, how people make decisions within the community, and our students do. We have a lot of faith in our students. We trust them, but at the same time, there's a lot more at stake right now. So there has to be a smaller space for error. So we want to make sure that we get as much information out ahead of time and help people understand what everybody's responsibility is here.
Great, thank you so much. For our parents, we have moved into our questions that are in the Q&A line now. So just as a reminder, if you have a question that you'd like to ask our panelists this evening, please submit that question, and we will do our best to address that tonight. We have about 17 minutes remaining. So I'm going to move into the Q&A questions that are live. Lisa, I work from a parent this evening. I work for a clinical research company that is currently testing the vaccine. So I'm very familiar with the CDC guidelines and testing protocols. Best practice is more like testing the students twice a week versus once a week. Have you considered increasing the amount of testing to at least one time per week? I believe if we do that, we can get back to in-person instruction earlier, which is the goal.
It was a long question. I think I got it. And I just want to say thank you for all your efforts in the COVID vaccine world. We appreciate your service. Yes, we have considered other testing options and platforms. I think a lot of the testing depends on what is available to us with our partnerships with the Kent County Health Department and the Maryland Department of Health. As you know, those tests are not inexpensive at all. Anywhere from $35 to $100. So we're definitely looking into additional testing strategies and options. Nothing's off the table so far.
Thank you. Lisa, we're back to you. We sent in proof of flu vaccine. Will the student get confirmation that what was sent was approved?
Thank your student or you for sending in the flu vaccine proof. They actually got confirmation when they sent it in. There was a tiny little blurb that popped up that said, thank you for submitting your flu vaccine. So if you didn't see that and you want to confirm with us, you can just give us a call tomorrow and we can confirm.
Great, thank you. Thad, will Washington College pursue an independent schedule if conference play does not occur?
If the decision's made for us to be able to compete in the spring, we will have to play some schools outside of our conference. What that looks like, we're still to be determined, but obviously the decision needs to be made whether we're going to compete or not. So I don't think there's going to be enough. I don't think all 11 conference schools are going to be playing in the spring, but I think there will be some conference schools that are playing in the spring.
Okay. Dr. Harvey, has any thought been given to graduation, in person, virtual, etc.? Any plans to allow seniors to have some time together and or functions before they leave college for the last time? That could be Sarah and Michael together, but I will leave it up to you two to sort it out.
Seniors have had a very tough year, and boy, do I think about our seniors a lot. I would love to have a way for seniors to come back in the spring. But we are still living with a pandemic that is incredibly persistent. I am not an epidemiologist or a physician, but I did hear Anthony Fauci say that he thinks there may be mass availability of a vaccine sometime in April. I am sure that our CPG group, our senior leaders, President Powell, will be looking very closely at events as they unfold in the spring. It would be wonderful to give students some time back on campus to see each other, but it would be tragic if doing that led to an outbreak among our students. So we're going to have to think very hard about that one. As for graduation, my guess right now is that a graduation of hundreds and hundreds of people in close proximity in the middle of May is probably a bridge too far, but that's not an authoritative statement. One can imagine safe ways to let people congregate in social distance ways, and maybe we can figure that out for graduation. But it's a long event, it's a well-attended event, and we will see where we are in terms of vaccines. Really, the vaccine is going to be the only thing that might make an in-person graduation possible. And even when a vaccine is announced, and I'm sure I'm telling all you parents stuff you already know, even when a vaccine is announced, there's going to be a significant lag, and approved, there's going to be a significant lag between its availability and its wide distribution to every single person who might want to attend a graduation. Sarah, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered it very well, Michael.
Sarah, can you help with this question, please? Hi, is there a date for when move-in sign-up will be released?
Yeah, so I believe, and it's possible that one of my staff who is listening to this may text me with a specific answer if they know it. I believe in the coming weeks, we're going to be starting to let students know how to sign up for their return date, which will be starting January 19th. It'll be between January 19th and February 1.
Great, thank you. And apologies, here's a pre-submitted question that we did not get to tonight, but kindly this parent has reminded us of that. And it just went away on my screen. I apologize, it just went away.
Susie, is it the one that says, can a student participate in live instruction at the college if they are living off campus?
Perfect, thank you. You can have my job. And let's hand that over to Dr. Harvey.
On the academic side, yes. Lisa, I don't know if you want to weigh in with any protocols. If students are living in town, obviously we don't have as much control over them. Lisa, do you want to weigh in from the health director side on town-based students coming to campus?
Sure. Those students that are in the Chestertown vicinity can easily be enrolled into our testing plan and be registered to use the Amoka app so they can access campus just like any student who would be living on campus. Believe me, we miss these students. We want them back.
Dr. Harvey, staying with you, could you help to clarify for our parents tonight, who is the community that you were referring to? And I don't know why these, that you communicate with. You mentioned this in relationship to possibly getting back to in-person teaching. It seemed that the reference was, it seemed that you were saying that if the community feels comfortable, then in-person teaching could occur earlier. So they just.
I think I probably was trying to say the contingency planning group. This is this incredibly hardworking body of 20 to 30 people who've spent really thousands of hours all told since March, ensuring the safety of our students, ensuring the safety of the folks who work at the college, who come in all ages and all health vulnerabilities, and to pick up on the word community, ensuring the community of Chestertown and King County where we are physically located. So we really have a very significant moral responsibility to think about safety for all of these different groups. And our college decision-making on coronavirus, it isn't just Dr. Powell telling us what to do. It's a very large group of very well-informed people continually gathering the latest information, finding out what is needed, what is practical, what is possible. The community part comes in that the contingency planning group consists of every category of person here you can think of: people who teach, people who work at the college, cleaning buildings, students, administrators. Lisa, the health director, is in constant communication with the Kent County Department of Health. All of us are in touch at the state level with our partner entities. So that's the group that I was referring to. We'd have to check in with if we were going to take another look at what's the exact transition point in the spring, assuming things go well.
Okay, great. There's a question, or maybe an idea here is, could we possibly split graduation so it's done by degree but still done in person?
It's a creative idea. This is a year of creative ideas. So that's intriguing.
Great. We do have another question about athletics, specifically about spring lacrosse season. To Thad, basically, are you saying that it looks like the spring lacrosse season is not going to happen unless we can get other conference schools comfortable to play?
No, sorry for any misunderstanding. It's our hope that we are making plans or contingency plans that if the conference comes in and allows institutions to make the decision of what's best for their institution, we will find institutions to compete against. Some of them very well may still be in the Centennial Conference. Some of them will not be in the Centennial Conference. So it'll be a kind of a mixture of schools that we potentially could compete against if we are allowed to play.
Okay. Dr. Harvey, has there been consideration for classes such as labs to start earlier?
There has not been specific course by course thoughts about starting earlier. It seems best in terms of planning to have a common start date. Now, in terms of access to labs, besides courses, there are individual students in the sciences primarily, but also some students in comparable situations in the creative and performing arts who throughout the semester may need access to individual research space for senior capstones or individual performance or practice space. In those cases, we do not have a blanket rule. What we are trying to have is uniform protocols, and we're working closely with departments and department chairs who know very much the status of individual students in their programs. Who is going to need special access to facilities, even during a time when, as a whole, we're not yet back in person.
Thank you. Lisa, following up on the testing frequency question, is testing only once every 2 weeks a budget, science, or availability-based decision? And also, how will we enforce the requirement for testing?
Let me take the second part first. The enforcing the requirement, we're going to go ahead and enroll the students in the testing process. The students have the ability to change the appointment if it doesn't suit their class schedule. We're going to work around schedules, but they don't show up for testing. We'll be following up with those students individually. And my hope is that they will understand the importance of testing to keep this community safe and keep our campus open. I would say for students who don't comply with testing, they violated our student health pledge and our code of conduct, and they're putting their peers, themselves, and us at risk. And so I think that would be a conduct issue at that point. As far as the testing every 2 weeks goes, lots of planning went into that. It's partly budgetary. Those tests, like I said, are anywhere from $55 to $100 a piece. Part of it is the ability or the availability of those free tests through the Kent County Health Department, and access. We want to make sure we have access for all of our students to get tested. So, like I said, nothing's off the table, but there were certain considerations at the time, and those testing strategies can change. I can't tell you how many testing plans I've been through, and just as all American citizens are facing, just when you think you have this all figured out, something else comes along and you have to step back and restart everything. So
Thank you. I just want to give a little bit of a 5-minute warning here before we close things down for this evening. You've got a couple more questions to get through. Again, this does not stop our conversation for the night. So does stop our conversation for the night, but it does not stop our conversation. Please keep your questions coming to us. Any one of us are happy to talk with you at any time. We are really working hard to improve and increase the amount of communication that is coming to our parents. So, please do look for, look at your emails, read your emails. We're sending all of these things out, all of our updates out to you that are going to our students, to our parents via email. We're posting those same updates on social media, and we're also putting all of that information online. But that doesn't mean that we're getting to all your questions. We know that, and that's why we're trying to host more of these opportunities to have a conversation with you. Still, we may not get to everything, so feel free to reach out to us. That's what Washington College is all about, personal relationships, and we want to make sure that we get you comfortable with your students' experience. So we're going to go on to our last couple questions. Is Washington College planning to offer graduate level classes? Love that question. If so, when and what types of classes would initially be offered? Dr. Harvey, Dr. Powell, either one of you tonight. Dr. Powell's been quiet. Let's let him answer that.
Let me just say, I can get off the hook here. It's part of the conversation. Right now, we're beginning of what I think is a very vibrant conversation about what Washington College can develop into in the next decade by taking the great things we do and not changing them, but expanding them. And there are a lot of different ways you can do that. And one would be to look at very selective graduate programs that connect to our current undergraduate programs. But that's a thought and not a plan yet. So conversation.
Thank you, sir. Michael, anything you want to add? You got 30 seconds.
If any parent wants to be part of that conversation, you can reach out to Wayne or reach out to me or anyone else. I mean, part of the conversation is what meets the needs and the desires of our students.
Great. Thad, is there any possibility for any conference play for any winter sports?
Great question. I think that decision, I know that's a decision that's on the president's agenda to be decided when they meet in December. No pressure, Dr. Powell, but, and again, I think the winter ones are a unique situation with the indoor sports versus the outdoor sports. So that's a unique element that they have to consider and the ADs have to consider as well. But as of right now, no decision has been made regarding the winter sports.
And let me just add a little timing thing there. When the presidents met earlier this week, they deferred making any decision until their next meeting, which I think is the second week of December. But they also put in there that maybe there were some people that said they would not be ready to make a decision then, would probably have a special meeting later in December. So we're a little bit at the mercy of some others here.
Great. We have 3 more questions. We're going to try to fire through these really quickly. Just a quick reminder to our parents tonight, if there are any unanswered questions that you feel haven't been covered, we are going to be emailing parents responses. We've been trying to keep up with your questions tonight as well through the Q&A function, but we will also be emailing responses to you directly. And I do want to offer one other update that maybe we haven't really delivered clearly, is that classes will be offered online all semester, regardless if we do bring some students back to in class, so that those students who are home will have access to instruction all semester long. If we choose to bring students back in the classroom, we will not shut off the online capabilities for our students who choose to stay at home. All right, we're gonna do sort of a fire round of last questions here. So our daughter's chorus professor is thinking of bringing the kids back when safe to do some campus singing. Does she have to be tested before arriving to campus? And if so, how far out from the day she is going to be on campus? Lisa.
I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to that parent on that. we're working with individual departments to come up with protocols for specific circumstances. For instance, students who want to come back to sing, performing arts, some of the art students. So we'll be working with those faculty members individually.
And we will make sure to update you. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you, Susie, for that reminder.
One more for you, Lisa. Does the Kent County Health Officer the ultimate decision maker as to when and if anything can happen?
Yeah, per the governor's order, the local jurisdiction, meaning our Kent County Public Health Officer, has the ability to enforce any rules and regulations pertaining to COVID operations or business shutdowns in this county. So we are in his good graces right now because he's a former college athlete. And so he really wants us to be successful. And we work very closely with them. We have been very transparent with him about what our plans are. We've taken his suggestions very seriously, but we have an excellent partnership with him.
Okay, Dr. Harvey, this is our last question for the evening, and I know this is something you're really excited about. So I've heard of conversations about additional summer class offerings. Any updates or information ready to be shared?
We are building a large, for the first time in the history of the college, we are building a large summer program that will consist of both online and in-person courses. We are constructing the schedule. We are filling it out. There will be opportunities, as you can imagine, from an online and person. There'll be opportunities for students to catch up in the summer with distribution courses they didn't have an opportunity to take during the spring. There will also be an opportunity for students to come in person, but the specific details, Susie, are still being developed. I would imagine that by the end of this semester, we'll have a pretty good sense of what we're offering in the spring. In addition, parents, part of our intention is to offer courses that may be of interest as AP courses for rising seniors in high school. And if you have friends who don't even go to Washington College, these may be attractive courses. We're going to try to deliver these courses with our special Washington College interaction, a lot of communication between the faculty and the individual students, keep them from getting too big, and really deliver a great educational experience in the summer. Frankly, it's an experiment. If it goes well, we see this building out not just as a one-off COVID year response, but as a new part of the college academic experience.
Well, thank you all. I want to thank all of our parents for being with us tonight. I know all of us here at Washington College feel so privileged to be part of this extraordinary community, and we're so grateful to you all for entrusting us with your sons and daughters, and we look forward to having them back on campus. We miss them, and we are here for you. Send us your questions, pick up the phone, give us a call. And we'll do our very best to continue to deliver an extraordinary education despite these extraordinary times. Thanks so much.